Picture this: a housemaid is at home awaiting her boss's return from work so that she can open the gate and finally retire to bed after a long day's work. At around 8:40 p.m., the usual time that her boss returns, she hears the familiar hooting at the gate, and she swiftly rushes to open because she notices the impatience as the hooting gets faster and louder. As she gets closer to the gate, the hooting becomes endless and is followed by gunshots and screams. Fearing for her life, the housemaid is forced to retreat and run for her dear life. Unfortunately, minutes later, police would find the lifeless body of renowned Ugandan city lawyer sprayed with bullets that had shattered her skull. This is the story of Robinah Kiyingi. Welcome back to Tavern Crime Chronicles. Here we explore strange, mysterious, chilling, solved and unsolved cases in Uganda, Africa, and beyond. If you have the nerve for fascinating stories, this is your channel. Please join us today, and together we will uncover the hidden mysteries behind the high fences, the closed doors, and the secrets lurking in the shadows. Today's story takes us to Buziga, a Kampala suburb in Makindye Division that houses some of Uganda's prominent families and hotels with a wonderful view of Lake Victoria. However, these residents, shielded by their high wall fences, would on one day wake up to the chilling murder of one of their own, right in front of her gate. Robinah Kiyingi was born on August 1, 1950 in Masuli, 7 miles off Gayaza Road, to Mr. and Mrs. Kasiri, who were businessmen. Robinah was for sure not born in privilege, but not lack either, and her parents did all they could to make sure that she and her siblings attained the best education. Robinah went to Gayaza High School for both her O and A levels. She would later go to Makerere University, then one of the best in Africa, and she graduated with a Bachelor of Laws thereafter, proceeding to Law Development Center for her bar exam. Robinah was not one to study with no play, and on one fateful day, her eyes would rock with one tall, dark, and handsome young man, Aggrey Kiyingi. He too was an elite student from King's College Budo studying medicine, and the two painted the streets of the university red as their love blossomed. They later wedded in the year 1977, becoming the Kiyingis. During these times, Uganda was experiencing political turmoil after independence, as one leader took office and would be toppled over by yet another aggressive, seemingly visionary militant. Idi Amin Dada had in 1971 seized power in a military coup from the then president, Apollo Milton Obote. His was leading a non-nonsense government, as history declared him one of the most brutal dictators in the world. Anyhow, around this time, as people woke up to the mysterious deaths of their friends and colleagues, roadblocks everywhere, and no hope whatsoever, many people who had the means sought refuge abroad, and among them were the Kiyingis. The newlywed couple relocate to Kenya, and around 1981 moved to Australia to forge a future. While in Australia, Dr. Kiyingi undertook a number of specialized trainings in various international institutions of world repute and became a heart specialist. It appeared that everything was falling into place as the couple acquired a lot of property, both in Australia and Uganda. The two also formed a powerful company called Dehezi International Limited in Kampala, where Robinah Kiyingi was the director. The Kiyingis had all the wealth they needed, but their biggest possessions were their 4 lovely children, among them a son, Andrew Kibuka, and daughter, Samali Nakagulie. Unfortunately, their love would not stand the test of time. It appears that while Dr. Kiyingi was based in Maryland, Australia, practicing cardiologist in one of the best hospitals, his wife was on most of the days in Uganda, Kampala, managing Dehezi International Limited, their computer firm. She too had not forgotten her career path and opened Kiyingi and Company Advocates, which she ran passionately, becoming one of Uganda's most sought-after female lawyers. The Bible says that you cannot serve 2 masters at a go, for you will love one and loathe the other. And that was true for the Kiyingis. As they both chased and grew their careers, their love suffered the shorter end of the stick, and naturally the long distance did not make things any better. Their marriage was shaky and actually had been on the rocks for many years. Dr. Kiyingi complained of being abandoned as a man who has needs that must be met by his wife, and also pointed out that his wife was having extramarital affairs with other men like Robert Kayanja and a one Sebuofu. Dr. Kiyingi tried to salvage the marriage by involving their parents and spiritual leaders like bishops for counsel, but their efforts were fruitless. When he noticed that his wife was less interested in working on their marriage, Dr. Kiyingi filed for divorce in 2003. It should, however, be noted that, amidst all this, Dr. Kiyingi had found a lover, a young girl called Robinah Kiyingi. So, whether he desired to salvage their marriage with his wife, or if it was just a facade, is still a ball in contention. I will leave that to you, our viewers, to judge. Robinah Kiyingi was served with divorce papers at her office along De Winton Road, and she immediately knew that trouble was on its way, and she was ready to face it headstrong. While Dr. Kiyingi filed divorce proceedings in Uganda, his wife Robinah Kiyingi challenged the jurisdiction of the courts in Uganda in the matter and filed similar proceedings in the Australian court, where she believed her property and other interests would be better catered for because of the property the family had in Australia, and also due to the fact that she had dual citizenship in both Australia and Uganda. The property was in both their names, and this move greatly angered Dr. Aggrey Kiyingi, who was now cohabiting with Robinah, his fiancée, and of course wanted all the property to themselves. The court, seeming in favor of Robinah, the jilted wife, and her children, threatened Dr. Kiyingi's happiness after divorce, and he knew he needed a plan, and what a dark plan it was. For Robinah, everything was seemingly falling into place, as the final verdict to their stressful divorce court hearings was due in 2 weeks, and she hoped to finally be at peace. Aside from the constant threats from her estranged husband, he made it his aim to frustrate her living conditions in their Buziga home on Konga Hill. With their marriage in court for a pending divorce, their assets were temporarily frozen, and thus Robinah had little to no cash at hand. Dr. Aggrey Kiyingi had cut off all the dealings with and any form of help to his wife. He always stayed elsewhere whenever he was in the country, and had stopped paying all utility bills in the home, causing their power to be disconnected due to accrued electricity bills. Robinah was hopeful because she saw a light at the end of her now dark tunnel. Unfortunately, she would never reach the light because it was dimmed and eventually cut off on the day July 11, 2005. On this fateful day, Robinah left her office at about 8 p.m. and drove home in her Toyota Mark II. As she approached Konga, her home area, she noticed that a car seemed to be trailing her, and her instincts were right. As she turned into the drive to her home, the suspicious car was on her tail bumper to bumper, and she knew something was wrong. As she approached their gate, she hooted her car loudly, scared for her life, as she impatiently waited for her house help to open the metallic gate. Her assailants were so fast, and before the gates could open to hopefully be her refugee, bullets were sprayed through her window, shattering her skull and killing her instantly. Police were called to the scene, and immediately investigations were underway, which led to the recovery of a gun and other items close to the scene of crime. The country was in mourning at the loss of a prominent lawyer who at the time was handling very delicate cases that some thought could have been the cause of her death. At the time of her death, she was the acting chairperson of Transparency International, a leading anti-corruption organization, lead consultant on Uganda law reports, a vice chairperson, Human Rights Network Uganda, among others. Police investigators were, however, quick to look into her husband, who at the time had every motive to have his wife Robinah dead. Aggrey Kiyingi had an alibi as he was away in Australia at the time of the murder, but further investigations placed him as having been in Uganda a few weeks earlier and had actually sneaked into their home in Konga, where he stole a television and sound system. Dr. Kiyingi was summoned into the country and arrested together with his co-accusers, Charles Berwanaho and Mugisha Bob. The three were arraigned before court and indicted for murder. Charles Berwanaho was a close friend of Dr. Kiyingi and also his employee at Dehezi International, while Bob Mugisha was a police officer closely associated with Dr. Kiyingi and used to provide him with escort and personal bodyguard services. The trial went on with little to no evidence to pin the three on the murder. While all fingers pointed to the reasons Dr. Kiyingi could have wanted his wife killed and possible ways he could have done it, there was no clear evidence, and without it, the jury had no case. State Attorney Joan Kagazi, also a prominent lawyer on the jury, told the court that Dr. Aggrey Kiyingi employed savage ways to slowly destroy his wife Robinah, emotionally, mentally, and lastly, physically. Robinah's family and friends were frustrated with the court hearings, which were in most cases adjourned, delayed, and not short of drama. Dr. Kiyingi at one time accused his children of wanting him to be jailed because they were greedy for the family's property and also jealous of their soon-to-be stepmother. This was after his children testified against him in court, describing him as a cruel husband to their mother. On her burial, they actually requested the presiding bishop to bar him from saying a word which showed their disdain for their father, and that they probably knew that he was responsible for the untimely death of their mother. Dr. Kiyingi, who did not have any lawyers but represented himself, challenged the jury, who hopelessly presented a weak argument of hearsay against the accused, and they had to be set free. After acquitting them of all murder charges, Dr. Kiyingi, now 61 years of age, flew back to Australia, where he married his longtime lover and fiancée Maimuna, who was half his age, in a grand but private ceremony in Nairobi, Kenya. This marriage was scoffed at by many critics, who mentioned that she married him for his money, since he would be dead in a few years, and she would be left with all his property. He went on to live his life fully, and even declared to challenge President Museveni in the 2016 presidential elections. It should, however, be noted that Dr. Kiyingi would die a few years later, at the age of 75, leaving her with 3 children. His older children, however, did not want anything to do with him, for they believed he had killed their mother. And while on his deathbed battling cancer, all he longed for was their phone call, but in vain. Anyhow, the Robinah murder case still remains one of Uganda's most televised but unsolved murder cases. We do hope that her children and family one day find peace in knowing that only God will give the true judgment. What do you think really happened to Robinah Kiyingi? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends and family. And we will see you on the next one.